Right, got it. So I'm Amanda. I am the Chief Executive of Semble and ActionFunder. And we're basically a social enterprise that's been going for about 10 years, delivering community campaigns. We're also a B Corp, and our whole purpose is to drive change from the grassroots up. And we passionately believe in the power of business to do good. And our role is really to help companies connect meaningfully with communities. So whatever solution is appropriate, that's what we try and do. But what I wanted to start with is just talk for a moment about community groups. So it's estimated that there are between 350 to 500,000 community organisations all around the UK. It's in a massive sector of people doing great stuff at the grassroots level. A community group is defined as being a group or an organisation that works for the public benefit. So they can be charities, social enterprises, community businesses, but also just gatherings, informal gatherings of people who come together to do something that they feel is really needed in their community. So normally these kind of groups are set up by people who live in the local area and have identified that there's a need for a particular activity or service, or there might be gaps in services, or some really essential services just aren't very accessible to people. Normally these groups will have some kind of governing document that outlines what it is they exist to achieve. But after that, the structure, as you've just heard, can vary enormously. Some can be local branches of bigger charities, but many of them are run by volunteers or with skeleton staff. What we absolutely know from our 10 years of working with these organisations is they're brilliant at making a very little bit of money go a really long way. And, you know, because they use the power of the community to help them deliver what they do. Now, what we saw during the course of the pandemic was this, we all experienced this incredible shift of our horizons into our local communities. It was enforced on all of us. And we witnessed an amazing outpouring of need to connect with people and to help each other, whether that was through the setting up of loads of mutual aid organisations or your street WhatsApp group. And of course, the 700,000 volunteers, people who volunteered to support the NHS. So this amazing reconnection back into local communities. And we saw companies really, really wanting to support their employees where they lived and the communities in which they were operating, as well as their customers and as well as people in their supply chain. So there was a really interesting refocus of where people were looking to be supported. Of course, the most difficult area was for the community groups themselves, who suddenly had this terrible double whammy of their services being needed more than ever, and yet their ability to gain money, secure money, was massively compromised. So we know from research that we've done that actually funding is the most important thing that keeps these community organisations going, but it's really tricky for them to do that. So as an organisation, and having manually run grant funding campaigns for about 10 years, we were pushed and decided to really accelerate our focus on automating the process of enabling companies to support community groups and for community groups to access corporate funding in a way that was very, very hard for them to do before. I'm sure you're aware that if you're a small organisation trying to access funding, you quite often have to fill out huge application forms, wait several months, and then normally 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're not successful. And all the time you're spending hours and hours filling out application forms, you're not doing the work that actually needs to be done on the ground. And on the other hand, we also know how incredibly generous companies are. In the UK, something like companies donate £2 billion a year to communities. It's a huge amount of money. And we know that companies also support their staff to do fundraising and make donations to charities. But 2% of that money goes to the small local community organisations. So what we're hoping is that perhaps inspired by today, people might add in the concept of giving to local communities as part of their portfolio of the great work that people are probably already doing. So that's a very quick whiz over community groups and a tiny bit about ActionFunder and why we were prompted to do it. And now what I'd like to do is hand over to Lynda and Ollie to talk about the insights that they've had into how they do charitable giving through their companies. So I'd like to start with Lynda. Perhaps you could kick us off, Lynda, and let us know your thoughts.
Thanks, Amanda. Can I first of all compliment you on two things? One, for being so gracious and saying that there were technical problems, because unless it was everybody else, I think that was me, the technical problem. So thank you for that. And also, most interesting background that I've seen for quite a long time. So really loving your setup. That's great. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I guess I'll start with who I am and who we are as a company. I run the brand marketing communications team at Sir Robert McAlpine. We're a 152-year-old construction company. I'm not responsible for charitable giving. Nobody is, which is a common problem in lots of big organisations. So it's something everybody wants to do, but nobody is really resourced or responsible for it, which I think is part of the challenge that we had. But if I step back a little bit, our construction business is 152 years old, and we started with one guy, Robert McAlpine, being asked to fit. He was completely down on his uppers, had no money in Scotland, was really struggling to look after his family. And he was offered a job to fix a chimney, and he had no money to get any labour or parts to do so. So he asked his friend, who was a butcher, to lend him some money, and he did. He lent him £2.45, which I think was a lot of money back in 1869. And because of that, he was able to undertake his first construction job. And we're now a £1 billion company, and we have over 2,000 employees, and we're still run by the same family, and they are in our business every day. And that sense of somebody taking a chance on you has stayed with them. So that sense of being responsible and wanting to give back and give everybody else a helping hand where they can is something that absolutely cuts through the core of this business. And as a construction business, that probably doesn't sound like it goes hand in hand, but here it very much does. So back in, I think it was just as the pandemic hit, we were about to undertake our first grant with ActionFunder, and we're about to do this because we were introduced to them because our giving was completely chaotic. So nobody owned it. We were doing loads of good things. We had corporate partners that we were signed up with that we all loved, but weren't really sure what we were doing. So every now and then someone would do a bike ride or cut their hair off, which I always think is just so brave. Then we had loads of individual giving, people doing bake sales for A, B, and C, and somebody doing dress, in ridiculous odd socks one day. And it was just all this stuff was happening, but there was no coordination of it. And so from a brand and marketing and communications perspective, I was a bit like, this everyone's doing all this great stuff, but I can't talk about it because I can't draw it together in any way. So from a purely selfish perspective, it was quite difficult. But actually from a really quite hard-nosed business perspective too, the more that we were trying to work with the public sector, the more we were being required to talk about our giving, to talk about the amount that we were giving back to communities and to measure that. And we just had no way of doing that. So chaos reigned. We were doing great stuff, but with absolutely minimal impact, I would suggest. So we set up a trial fund by ActionFunder in Manchester. Manchester was a region that we'd done some work, but we wanted to do more in. So we wanted to deepen our roots in that community. So we set up our first trial grant, and Semble helped us by, first of all, explaining to us how we would do that, but holding our hands through the whole process and actually setting us up with local contacts on the council, etc. And they joined us on a judging panel. Now, it was great because the local contacts really knew the charitable organisations and community groups that were asking for the funding, and they could really help us understand it. We were also able to put local employees on a judging panel, which helped them to feel connected to something in the business. And it was great because those local employees were able to develop relationships with the local councils who one day might be our clients. So it had multiple benefits really. And we did this as a trial, and it was a huge success. And everybody who worked on that project kind of stepped away and said, that felt a bit different. That was really nice. That was really enjoyable. I felt a bit warm and fuzzy doing that, which in construction, it's not much warm and fuzzy, I can tell you. So we decided to go ahead and shift our giving in a way, instead of everybody doing individual things, to shift it towards using the ActionFunder platform. And so this year we did 8 grants across the UK. We gave over, I think, £110,000 so far to community groups. Each of those was in a different regional location. So we were able to invite employees from the local region or who had a natural affinity to that region to be able to volunteer to be on the judging panels. And I think the 2 things that really stand out to me, one is that we got to know each other far better than we did before on those judging panels. Like, instead of just the head, we were getting to know the heart. We were understanding when we were looking at the applications from the amazing groups, and it's very hard to pick who to give the money to, but what a privilege to be able to do that. As we were learning about the different groups, people were disclosing part of themselves, and we were learning why that charity would matter to them. And it really started to deepen our relationships as employees, which was just phenomenal. But also it gave us access to community groups in a way that I just couldn't do before. As I said, we're not resourced. I didn't know how to go through the due diligence of finding a community group and checking that they were above board and it was okay for us to give money to them and that it would all be okay. We just didn't have that. And we now had a fast track to do that. And so we did these 8 grants. Everybody who was on the judging panel felt more deeply connected. We saw in our employee surveys that kind of pride in the company and connectivity went up in a really aligned timeline. But really important, we got to know those community groups and we got to see the impact that it was having at a really on the ground level, and we can now follow those. We are very good social media friends with quite a few of them. We try and keep in touch with them. So I think our story is very much that it took us from a position of great intent with massive amounts of chaos to a really quick and fast track, easy way to have greater impact through our giving, and then help employee engagement along the way, but also help us be able to report that impact in quite a business hard-nosed way for when we were bidding for future work or trying to develop relationships. So it's a really whistle-stop tour of how it's been for us so far. So and I'm more than happy to dig into any of the detail with anyone on this call or afterwards if our details are shared. Hope that's helpful, Amanda.
That's brilliant, Lynda. Just a quick follow-up before we go into Ollie, but just on the results, have you had any results through from any of the projects and around the impact?
Yeah, we have, and I think it always astounds me because we get an impact report, which you would think was really, sort of non-emotional, but because it tells you about impressions and you've reached this many, but when it says how many people that small grant has reached and how many people in total, I think that's always really astounding. So we do get impact reports with facts and figures. This amount of money hit this amount of people, was able to go on to do this, but the real juicy and lovely and enjoyable bits that come back are the stories that come back and the pictures, and that often we get things sent to us via social media and our direct mail from the individual charities themselves, giving us little updates and thanking us or sending us a quote from somebody that wanted to pass that on. And that's the stuff that all the figures are great and we need them, but it's the stories that they're really special, and we didn't have access to anything like that before.
That's fantastic, really lovely to hear. Thank you so much. So store up any questions you might have for Lynda. And let's move on to Ollie. And Ollie, we'd love to hear your story now too, please.
Of course. Hi everyone. And it was interesting hearing some of the sort of pain points there, because we shared them, and our business is a factor many times smaller than Robert McAlpine. We were founded. We're a law firm by day trade, and we were founded 10 years ago. We are 14 in number. 10 lawyers and then support staff. So we're a very slow burning startup, and sometimes call ourselves an SME, but to the point about not having a dedicated charity representative, that was very much us. That's something that together with a colleague I've stepped into this year. And I mean, it's just from a personal perspective where we are coming up to the end of the year without Semble's support, it simply just just couldn't have happened. So more on that in sort of towards the end of the intro. We have always had a hand in charitable giving. Roger Blears, who founded the firm 10 years ago, he founded the Charitable Trust back in 2005. At the time, it was called the BCT Charitable Trust. It's since rebranded, and it's operated through the receipt of fairly ad hoc income from our corporate clients. So we've always done pro bono work, or there are ad hoc structuring arrangements where the BCT Trust would receive dividends and put those dividends to use. And the giving was ad hoc as well. So our objective has always been the education and well-being of young people. And within those parameters, grants have always been allocated to young people in sectors such as music, sports, the natural environment when benefiting young people, arts and crafts, but it's been by its very nature ad hoc. So specific charity challenges is a good example. If someone was doing something to raise money, the charitable trust would make a donation. If there were one-off events, that was also a fairly usual grantee opportunity, and it's sort of rumbled along for well over a decade now in that same format, giving over 350 grand in total, so not insignificant amount. And I was just, while Lynda was speaking, I just checked when the first communication I had with Semble was, and it was back in March. So it's actually quite amazing to think that from March to now, we've refined our model, used the platform to have an outreach which we've not been able to achieve really in sort of over 10 years. And I think whilst I can't speak to the numerous employee surveys which Lynda has, and the multiple offices and being able to do things in local cities, I think the sort of shining star for me is simply where the technology is now, and what that has meant for us as an SME, because we were reacting to grantees getting in touch or connections getting in touch, taking a view, and then the trustees would allocate. Obviously, through the power of the dashboard and the campaign scheme, we received. And sorry, just for background, we've run one campaign, and that campaign closed in September. And even sort of having it open during the summer months, we had around about 40 applications, pretty much all within the scope of our objective. And we deployed the funding last month, I believe, and we've started to have a trickle through of updates, which I'll probably whether I come on to or not. But I suppose it was your question at the end there, Amanda. But we have had one letter in particular, which has been great to receive, and that's from a Olympic running coach who runs a South London running school for underprivileged athletes, and they were one of our bigger grantees, and we had a sort of full typed and signed letter last week to say how much that meant. We've held some back from the fund to grant to that particular grantee again in the new year. We spoke with Seglin about the idea that rather than maybe a lump sum at one point, we could stage some of this micro fund across a number of months, and Semble have been able to accommodate that. So yeah, it's interesting. It's, I guess, to sort of wrap up sort of my introduction, it's that Robert McAlpine and RW Blears are such different ends of the spectrum in terms of size and age, but we definitely share similar pain points in terms of deploying technology and a platform to be able to reach people we otherwise couldn't have done. And it's just been a massive success. And I'm not having touched on it yet, but it has been something internally that has resonated very well with those that have been involved on the judging panel.
How did you define who would get involved in the judging panels, Ollie?
It was, well, it's slightly dictated by the work from home, not work from home rota that we're switching on and off at the moment. I managed to allocate it to a day when we had majority of people in the office, and then we just ran it one lunchtime, which was great. So it was a pretty broad church of people. We had Roger was there, but then we also had some of the more junior staff involved as well. So it was yeah, it was a sort of it was a good judging panel, and it was a funner lunchtime than your average. So yeah, that was how we did it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ollie, for that. And I'm just going to add one extra question, which is just how did you find it straightforward to set up a fund, having never done something like this before?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we act for clients who raise funds for profit the whole time, and they're often incredibly complex, etc. And I've seen, and there are plenty of people trying to do what Semble do on the for-profit side, and to be honest, I'm yet to see someone truly crack it, because there's a lot of complexity around sort of fundraising for profit. The speed of deployment and the ease of using the Semble dashboard was a different experience, and so familiar with the idea of promoting and then running a campaign, but it was all new to us, me and my sort of co-representative, and so we found we sort of had Seglin sort of every step of the way, just making sure that we would sort of, you know, on our roadmap, because there was a roadmap to the campaign in terms of promoting things. And then whilst the race was open, I was getting cold feet because we were raising in August, and Seglin was saying no. So it's very different to sort of raising funds for profit when everyone's on holiday. You know, you will have community groups applying during the height of summer, and that was the case. So no, it was good.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, I'd love to open it up now and get other people to join the discussion. So perhaps I'm just thinking, what's the best way of doing it? Perhaps if you do can you do a hand raise, and then we can go to you, or just turn off your microphone and jump in. So who has a question for either myself or Ollie or Lynda? Or reflections, it doesn't have to be a question, just reflections. Anyone to kick us off? Charlotte's got to go. Thanks, Charlotte, for joining us. Okay.
Jump in with a question, if that's okay.
Yes, please do, Lynda.
I have one for you, Amanda, which is a quick one, because people have been using the name Semble as well as ActionFunder. If you could kind of speak to that for a minute and clear up what that means.
Sure.
My question to both Lynda and Ollie is, as a national and international company, how do you each manage the fact that with ActionFunder you're giving to local community on a very local scale, despite the fact that you are either a national or an international organisation?
Why don't you respond first, Lynda? I'll clear up Semble at the end.
I guess really simply, everyone who works here lives somewhere. Everyone who works here has somewhere that is their village, their town, their city that matters to them. And for us to and also we're building projects, you know, all our projects are not Big Ben, although one of them is. Some of them are student accommodation in Durham, you know, so we are working in communities. So it's really important actually that when we do giving, we don't just do big charities such as our corporate partner is, you know, Maggie's Cancer Charity. We want to be able to benefit the place that we are working and the place that our people live, and that was really hard to do before, whereas these very local community groups are now accessible to us. So as we move to build, you know, a new arena or football training stadium somewhere, we're now able to say, right, that postcode, we're going to be employing people there, and we're going to be actually in the local people's lives for quite some time. So let's set up a fund there, let's get local people involved, let's start to connect with the community, and we're able to do that now. So it sort of becomes part of our business project planning rather than a separate tangent of giving. It's now part of, oh, we've got a new project, it's in Durham, what will the grant look like? You know, it just becomes part of business as usual, which is really nice instead of it being on the side, Lorna.
Yeah, I know we thought about this at the time of when we were drawing up our scope, and obviously we set our sector at a directed at young people, and whether we then sort of restricted it also by geography. We're a single office. We're in London. Some people do live outside of London these days, but there was no, and our clients are national. There was no obvious hook to single out community, and I was sort of loath to make it a London-based charity, particularly because people have grown up and worked elsewhere. So we didn't, and so we set it at a national coverage, and that worked really well. We've got successful applicants in Middlesbrough, Birmingham, down on the south coast in Devon. But whilst also making sure we've got coverage within London. So there's a community group in North London, the Running Academy I mentioned in South London. So we had a really broad church in terms of geographies, and I think based on the amount of funding we can generate through the trust each year, we'll do one per year. And I think we'll run the same scope next year because it's proven to work very well.
Great. And in terms, I mean, you both talked a little bit about business benefit. You did, particularly Lynda, in the end bit that you were saying, where it's actually helping you with some of your bids. Can you expand a little bit on that, perhaps?
Yeah, so I mean, in nearly all bids, we would always try and express who we are as a company in the round. So not just our technical expertise of what we can do, but what matters to us, our values, and how we actually live those. So now we're able to take the data that comes from the impact reports that ActionFunder give us, telling us who we gave money to, how many people it directly benefited, what sort of benefits they were, and we're able to just transfer those straight into bids. And actually, especially for public sector bids, where part of the scoring will be around what you have done for that local area, then now we're able to directly boost ourselves up that rating for winning work in public sector. So, and as we mature with ActionFunder, I think we'll only see more and more benefits come from that, really. But essentially, it's just made it easier for us to showcase the good work that we're doing, which was almost lost before. Humbly, great, but off the, below radar.
And Ollie, do you see any business benefit yet?
I haven't sort of done any formal marketing on our site yet, because I sort of wanted to sort of produce a brochure. I'll probably catch up with you, Segler, in the following weeks about producing something like that we then we advertise it on our website saying we've partnered with Semble, and then I updated the website to say we were in live mode, and I think so it doesn't get lost in the sort of December fuzz. Early in the new year, there'll be a sort of third and final update as to here are the projects we funded, here are some of the updates we received, just to show that really hit targets, and we're building into Fund 2 in spring, which is probably when we're ready, and just keep that kind of dynamic up, I think, over the next 3 years. Whether or not it benefits as an external business, it's tricky to say, and I spoke about it with Semble's PR team, because I think a lot of because we've got our own clients and they've got their head down on their own funding objectives, it probably doesn't. And so for us, it's an employee-based, sort of struggle to think of what the word is, but positive, I guess. I think in this day and age, when you've got the ability to raise money pro bono, and we just don't want to be seen or feel like we are just purely doing the day job Monday to Friday, and the practicality of trying to do something outside of the day job without the support of something like ActionFunder was a pipe dream. So For us, it's been very much employee focused, together with the connection to the grantees. I think from a client perspective, I'm pretty agnostic.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And, you know, that might yet come. I think what we're really clear is the stories. I mean, you know, you talked about it being a staff thing. That for a huge number of industries at the moment, talent recruitment and retention is one of their biggest challenges.
Yeah.
So actually being able to demonstrate that you have a set of values and you are living those values and you are making these positive contributions and you're enabling your staff to get involved in some of that decision making is actually a massive good thing for the business in terms of holding on to their staff and keeping them motivated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think I'm probably a bit of detail to, again, sort of using that the running academy example. The connection actually did come through whilst the funding was placed through the platform. The connection was through a new employee of ours, Rose Harvey, who she was the she was the second British female in this year's London Marathon. So she's an almost professional long distance runner outside of her day job. Her coach, Phil Kissy, he heads up the academy, and it was through Rose that we made that donation. Obviously, the donations are going to Phil's other junior runners who are underprivileged. But for Rose, as a new employee, she was really taken aback by the firm's ability to deploy capital to another part of her wider life. And so that's and to that point, I think, you know, her loyalty to the firm, her sort of you know, positivity, it's not something we could have otherwise achieved. So that's been really nice, and that's taking a hybrid case where it's not purely been a recipient found through the platform. It's been something we originated ourselves, but ran it through the platform, and ran it probably a lot better than we would have done offline.
Ollie, I think that's, sorry, Amanda, I was just going to say, I think that's really interesting. I forgot to mention that as ours got more mature, we found that people were saying, well, actually, I know this group. Would it be okay to tell them about ActionFunder and they can sign up? And so it was really good, actually, that it worked the other way as well. So yeah, people were more deeply invested, which is nice.
It's really nice. And interestingly, we're currently running a promotion with Green King, which is all customer nominations. So customers in pubs or who buy their beer can scan a QR code and nominate their favourite community organisations to take part in a fund that they've put up on the ActionFunder platform. And I think we haven't mentioned how much it costs to use the platform, but I guess I'd throw it back to you two. The cost, so people don't know, it's 5%. So if you make a fund of £10,000, then we would ask for £500, I think that's right, got my maths right, to pay for the upkeep and the admin of the platform. Do you both think that's value for money?
Unbelievably so, yeah.
Yeah, unbelievably so. We were handheld through all of our grants. I mean, it was, you know, if we'd have tried to employ interim resource to see us through that, or consultancy, or, you know, any of the stuff that Segalen and the team did for us, it would have cost us an absolute fortune. So yeah, great value. Thank you, Amanda.
That's not just financial cost either. There's a time cost.
The time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It would be really nice to hear from some of the other people on the call. So perhaps, can any of you tell us what you're currently doing in terms of your charitable giving? Michelle?
Oh, I didn't quite need to unmute myself then that quick. So I suppose I'm coming at this from a slightly different perspective, that we are actually a social enterprise. Been in business for nigh on 40 years, and we provide employment opportunities for people with disabilities. We have, in the last last 4 years, we've realised that the ethos perhaps wasn't at the heart of the business as it should have been, because it was tough times from, you know, we did actually go on to short-time working. We've talked about redundancies, and we're now probably in the last 4 years at the most stable place that the business has ever been, to the point where we're actually looking at opening up a second factory. And, you know, it's we're living the high life at the moment. Long may it continue, but we all know that can turn as quickly as anything else. But in the last probably 18 months, we've done a lot more in regards to looking outside of the core ethos, to picking a company charity, which was voted for by our staff members. We actually picked the British Heart Foundation. We've done various things from bake sales to ridiculously, and it sounds pathetic now when you've got an extreme marathon runner in the room, but there was 10 of us that did the wolf run, and when I say that we're pen pushers, we literally are pen pushers, so that was a bit of a shock to the system. But we can measure obviously the good that we do with that outside the ethos, along with we've made a pledge to this financial year, and we'll make a pledge to the next financial year. So we've got loads that we are working on, but we're not talking about monetary in the same level that Sir Robert McAlpine be and Blears will be, because we're if we raise a couple of grand a year actually for a local charity, or we're trying to introduce schools to that need work doing to the local construction companies that are bidding in the area, because obviously that's got social value to them. So ours is a bit of a different perspective, but so interesting to hear it from the other side. And I'm actually on your website now, if I turn the screen that way, just having a look around, because I'll be honest, I didn't know a huge amount, but I think there's some stuff that we perhaps could do going forward. So I'd be happy to take that offline, Amanda, if you get a chance, that we can have a chat.
That would be great. And I think Lynda wanted to reply, because she's...
I was just going to say, first of all, well done for the run. Any run is an absolute achievement. There's no competition in how far. But we noticed that our trial grant was £3,000. I can't remember, but the grants that we did were small. Some of them were 2,000, some of them were 3,000. And that to a community group is an absolutely huge amount of money. Like, we were really surprised. I think because we're so used to doing big scale corporate giving, at what people were asking for, and they were asking for £1,500, and that would sort out free haircuts for people for like a year. And you're just like, okay, you can have so much impact with the different sizes of grants. So I think that we found that really to I wouldn't let the scale of giving and how you direct it limit you having a great impact.
Oh, fantastic. I literally was not aware of schemes like that, so it's definitely something that we'd like to get involved with, without a doubt, and see how we can build on it, along with obviously keeping in line with our core ethos as well. Yeah,
and I'm really happy to pick up with you about your business offline as well, and understand about
you might have an email in your inbox already, if I'm
honest. Excellent. The joy of an intimate meeting. Martina, did you want to jump in?
No, but everything that you've been saying is really interesting. We are kind of, in terms of size, I work for Yo-Yo, I'm the head of operations at Yo-Yo. We are a digital agency. We are about 25 people, so it's, we're not massive, but we're doing as individuals quite a lot of different things. And from what you've been saying, having a more of a unified approach to it sounds, and something that you can evidence afterwards, sounds like a really good idea. My only question to you, Amanda, I suppose, is you said about the 5%, but is there a minimum kind of fund size, I suppose, that you would have? So is there a minimum expectation of the amount raised?
I'm actually going to ask James to answer that question.
Yeah, hi Martina. Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, we recommend funds don't really go below a total size of £5,000. That, and just to clarify what, just to build on what Lynda was saying, our sort of language, we call a fund the sort of total pot of money that you're giving away, and then the individual grants are the amount that a project or a charity can win. And so those grant amounts can be as low as £500. So they can be small awards, but the total fund size should not really go below 5,000, because in order to really make an impact, starting at that amount is a really good base level. And just to give you a few more examples, Michelle, on your example, we've got a handful of funders at the moment that are live with that minimum size of 5,000. And already seeing a really good impact, with smaller grants of say 1,000, and then you've got a really small portfolio of 5 great projects, maybe really local to your office or across the country. But you can go on to actionfunder.org and see the funds there, and take a look if you're interested to see what they look like.
Thank you very much. Great question, Martina. And I think also, just to echo what Lynda was saying, the joy here is that, brilliant to be giving to the British Heart Foundation, but your ability to connect directly with them is quite small. Whereas here, Lynda is able to promote through her social media the work of tiny organisations doing stuff on the ground, which is invaluable for them in terms of raising their awareness and creating that really authentic connection with a community project. So I think we're coming to the end, unless anyone wants to jump in very, very quickly. And also, as Perrine's just saying, you can see the projects on the ActionFunder website, and there are some brilliant ones for £500. There's a Norse Bags one, which for £500 that they can make reusable bags out of canvas and give them away for free for about 1.5 years. So, you know, this is what's so exciting about supporting community organisations. They really can make a tiny bit of money go a really, really long way. So I think I'd just like to stop now, because we promised you 45 minutes and it's 47, by saying a huge thank you to Lynda and to Ollie for joining us and sharing the insights from their organisations and what they've been doing with their charitable giving. Thank you, that was fantastic. And also to you for joining us this lunchtime, giving up some of your time to listen to us. I hope it was interesting. Please do get back in touch. You've got us on LinkedIn. We're very responsive. We'd love to hear from you if you've got questions or you'd like to talk about whether or not you can in a position to set up a fund or nominate groups to come onto ActionFunder. Please do get in touch. And thanks very much to everybody and the team for organising this, by the way.
Thanks, Amanda. Happy Giving Tuesday, everybody.
Yes, happy Giving Tuesday. And Perrine.
Just a tiny thing, if you're interested, you'll be able to book a demo of ActionFunder really soon. So if you just want to have like a quick look around of what it looks like and how you can set up a fund, there'll just be the possibility to do this as well from the website.
Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy Giving Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.